The year 1931 brought unimaginable devastation to China. Unprecedented floods ravaged the country, leaving a trail of destruction and despair. The Yangtze River, the lifeblood of China, transformed into a raging torrent, breaching its banks and engulfing everything in its path. The Yellow and Huai Rivers, also vital waterways, followed suit, overflowing their banks and inundating vast swaths of land. This catastrophic event, known as the 1931 China floods, remains one of the deadliest natural disasters in human history. The floods primarily impacted central China, a region densely populated and heavily reliant on agriculture. Millions of people living along the banks of these mighty rivers found themselves directly in the path of the rising waters. The floods spared no one, affecting people from all walks of life, from farmers tending their fields to merchants in bustling cities. The scale of the disaster was staggering. Millions of acres of farmland, the source of sustenance for countless families, were submerged. Homes, businesses, and infrastructure were destroyed, leaving communities in ruins. The floods left an indelible mark on China's landscape and psyche, a stark reminder of the raw power of nature. The 1931 China floods were the result of a confluence of extreme weather events. This catastrophic event is often referred to as one of the deadliest natural disasters of the 20th century. The floods affected a vast area, causing widespread devastation and loss of life. Unusually heavy rainfall in central China throughout the spring and summer of 1931 saturated the ground, leaving it unable to absorb any more water. The relentless downpours turned fields into lakes and villages into swamps, disrupting daily life and agriculture. The Yangtze River basin in particular received more than double its average annual rainfall, creating conditions ripe for disaster. The river, which is the longest in Asia, became a conduit for destruction as it swelled beyond its capacity. As if the torrential rains were not enough, a series of typhoons swept across the region, further exacerbating the situation. These typhoons brought with them fierce winds and additional rainfall, compounding the already dire circumstances. These powerful storms brought with them even more rain and strong winds, causing the already swollen rivers to rise even higher. The typhoon's impact was felt far and wide as they uprooted trees, destroyed homes, and added to the chaos. The combined force of these meteorological events proved too much for the rivers to contain. The rivers, already burdened by the excessive rainfall, could no longer hold back the deluge, leading to widespread flooding. Adding to the crisis, an unusually heavy snowpack in the mountains melted rapidly with the arrival of spring. The melting snow contributed a significant volume of water to the already overwhelmed river systems. This surge of meltwater flowed into the rivers, adding to their already overflowing volumes. The rivers, unable to cope with the additional water, began to spill over their banks, inundating the surrounding areas. The sheer volume of water flowing into the rivers overwhelmed their capacity, causing them to breach their banks and unleash chaos upon the surrounding areas. Villages, towns, and farmlands were submerged, leading to a humanitarian crisis. The 1931 floods were a stark demonstration of the sheer power of nature. The floods not only caused immediate destruction, but also had long-term impacts on the region's economy, infrastructure, and population. The combination of heavy rainfall, typhoons, and snowmelt created a perfect storm that overwhelmed China's river systems, leading to one of the most catastrophic natural disasters in recorded history. The aftermath of the floods saw efforts to rebuild and recover, but the scars left by this disaster were felt for many years to come. While the 1931 China floods were triggered by extreme natural events, human actions played a significant role in amplifying their devastating impact. The floods, which are considered one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history, were not solely the result of nature's fury. Deforestation and land mismanagement practices had stripped the land of its natural ability to absorb rainfall. Over the years, vast areas of forest were cleared for agriculture and development, leaving the soil exposed and vulnerable. Without trees and vegetation to soak up the excess water, runoff increased dramatically, overwhelming the rivers and contributing to their overflow. The natural barriers that once helped to mitigate the impact of heavy rains were no longer present. Furthermore, China's flood control infrastructure at the time was inadequate to cope with a disaster of this magnitude. The existing systems were designed for more predictable and less severe flooding events. Existing dikes and levees, built to withstand more typical flood levels, proved woefully insufficient against the onslaught of the 1931 deluge. Many of these structures were outdated and not built to handle the extreme conditions they faced. Many of these structures were poorly maintained and crumbled under the pressure of the rising waters, exacerbating the flooding. The lack of regular maintenance and upgrades left them vulnerable to failure when they were needed most. Urban planning also played a role in the extent of the disaster. Rapid urbanization and population growth had led to the expansion of cities and towns into flood-prone areas. Many cities and towns were located in low-lying areas prone to flooding, and construction often ignored the risks posed by the proximity to major rivers. The lack of proper zoning and building regulations meant that many structures were built in areas that were highly susceptible to flooding. This lack of foresight left these areas particularly vulnerable to the devastating effects of the floods. When the rivers overflowed, the water quickly inundated these low-lying urban areas, causing widespread destruction. The 1931 floods highlighted the dangerous interplay between human actions and natural disasters. It became evident that human activities had significantly altered the landscape and increased the vulnerability of communities to such events. While the floods were triggered by extreme weather events, deforestation, inadequate flood control infrastructure, and poor urban planning significantly worsened their impact, turning a natural hazard into a catastrophic human tragedy. The lessons learned from this disaster underscore the importance of sustainable land management, robust infrastructure, and thoughtful urban planning in mitigating the effects of natural disasters. The 1931 China floods serve as a stark reminder of how human actions can exacerbate the effects of natural disasters and the critical need for proactive measures to prevent such tragedies in the future. The 1931 China floods left an indelible mark on the country, both physically and emotionally. This catastrophic event is etched into the collective memory of the nation, a somber reminder of nature's overwhelming power. The sheer scale of the disaster was difficult to comprehend. Entire regions were transformed into vast, unrecognizable lakes, swallowing up homes, farmlands, and lives. At their peak, the flood submerged an estimated 88,000 square kilometers of land, an area larger than the entire country of Austria. This immense body of water stretched as far as the eye could see, creating a surreal and haunting landscape. Major cities, including Wuhan, Nanjing, and Guangzhou, were partially or fully submerged, their streets transformed into canals. Boats became the primary mode of transportation, as people navigated through what were once bustling urban centers. The human toll of the disaster was nothing short of catastrophic. Families were torn apart, and communities were left in ruins. While accurate figures are difficult to obtain, estimates of the death toll range from 1 to 4 million people, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in human history. The sheer number of lives lost is staggering, a testament to the flood's devastating impact. Millions more were left homeless and displaced, their lives upended by the floods. Makeshift camps and shelters sprang up, filled with people who had lost everything. The floods inflicted widespread damage to infrastructure, crippling transportation and communication networks. The destruction was so extensive that it took years to rebuild and restore normalcy. Roads, bridges, and railway lines were washed away, cutting off entire regions from the outside world. This isolation exacerbated the suffering, as communities were left to fend for themselves. This made it incredibly difficult to deliver aid to those in need, further compounding the suffering. Relief efforts were hampered by the sheer scale of the disaster and the logistical challenges it presented. The 1931 China floods were a disaster of unimaginable proportions. The scale of the flooding, the loss of life, and the widespread destruction left an indelible mark on the nation. The loss of life, the displacement, and the destruction of infrastructure left the country reeling. In the aftermath, communities came together to rebuild, showing remarkable resilience in the face of such overwhelming adversity. The floods served as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of human societies in the face of nature's wrath. It underscored the need for better preparedness and infrastructure to mitigate the impact of such natural disasters in the future. In the years that followed, significant efforts were made to improve flood defenses and disaster response mechanisms. The lessons learned from the 1931 floods have shaped modern approaches to flood management and emergency preparedness in China. Today, China boasts some of the most advanced flood control systems in the world, a testament to the enduring legacy of the 1931 floods. These measures have significantly reduced the risk of similar disasters, protecting millions of lives and livelihoods. The story of the 1931 China floods is a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of learning from the past to build a safer future. It stands as a testament to the strength and determination of those who survived and rebuilt in the face of unimaginable adversity.